Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynor. So what I want to do in this video is I want to cover my most recent insights after kind of paying attention to what's gone on, over the last week. That's basically what I do is I just, kind of react intuitively with my own aesthetic as to what I'm sort of offered. Right? I mean, that's all we can do in life, right? Somebody comes to you and offers you something and, you can accept it, you can reject it, you can reflect on it, right? I mean, I think this is ultimately what your power allows you to do. But we're not always so logical about these kinds of things because we have emotional connections to things. And it's not quite right to say that those emotional connections to things can just be sort of mechanically cut off, because you don't really know 100% why things are happening the way they are. So on some level, you have to accept your life and forgive yourself. Everything is that's happened has to be seen as good, or else you're starting off on the wrong foot. You're starting off on the shameful foot. And this can be caused by you, and unfortunately it can also be caused by other teachers too. So the elephant in the room is that we're trying to fix others to our own liking. We're trying to fix the other to our own liking. And, the people who do this, honestly, they seem like really stage blue people that were burned probably in their childhood for some reason. Maybe they grew up in a stage red kind of environment, so they're never going to be able to escape this. This is like their shadow problem. They think stage blue is the antidote to corruption. They're going to be stage blue, however they dress that up in other theory, right? They're going to just be stage blue. And it's so amazing to me that so many of our issues do go back to childhood. It goes back to whatever issue we had in childhood. Somebody overpowered us in some kind of a way, and we spend the rest of our life in therapy, even self-imposed therapy, even creating all this philosophical nonsense, right, to deal with these problems that really, I mean, there's got to be a better way, right? You would think a life coach would be able to give a better way. Well, I'll try to do that. I mean, I think I do have a pathway for that, because I've realized that with myself. You have to love your whole life up to this point and into the future. It's got to be loved. It's got to be accepted. Otherwise, you're not in a constructive mood to make any kind of creative change in line with your goals. Of course, creativity is always happening, but let's assume that you have some kind of a goal, right? You want to make some changes or something like that. People are hung up. I'm hung up. You're hung up. And so ultimately what the life coach is, or should be, is the change agent for somebody who is hung up. That's the best thing that a life coach can be. But think about this. What happens if the life coach is hung up? Well, then it doesn't work, right? This is the problem with teaching. So a life coach isn't really a teacher, they're a coach. There's a difference between being a teacher and a coach. But ultimately, good life coaches are change agents for themselves and for you. They know what's required to change, right? The right kind of mindset. This idea of hating yourself is somebody else's projection or your own projection. That's not going to be beneficial. And realize too that, I love teachers. I've always loved teachers because I'm always been a major fan of education. But teachers want to preserve sameness. It's like the college professor who teaches calculus, every semester for 200 years. You got to feel sorry for this person. They never change. But what they're good at is they're good at teaching whatever sameness that is that they have, right? Whether it's Carl Jung, whether it's philosophy, intro to philosophy, whether it's chemistry. Teachers are good at teaching, but they're also about preserving sameness. Otherwise, they have no teaching. See, they don't realize that their teaching is not grounded on theory, it's grounded on intuition and aesthetics. What they have to teach, they're not confident enough to support. See, they have a lack of confidence, because if they were confident to support their own aesthetic and their own intuition, that's a harder row to hoe, but it's much more satisfying because the teaching is 100% your voice, not hiding your voice behind some kind of authority, whether it's philosophy, spirituality, metaphysics, epistemology. I mean, fuck all that stuff, man. You know what I mean? Like, anybody who knows themselves knows that ain't me. What I have to do is I have to decide how to change in ways that I think are good for me to change. Because when you're the good teacher, you're banning the good thing, right? The thing that actually challenges you, you're banning because you're conservative. You're preserving your own teaching. But it's like that Voltaire quote, if you want to know who rules over you, just look for who you are not allowed to criticize. Not allowed to criticize. How did that happen? Like, when did it happen to you that you were not allowed to criticize something? Why? Because you're in a relationship and you're scared of losing that relationship. And you're involved with somebody who's trying to build a relationship with you, with them as the person you're not allowed to criticize. What I think is that life coaching should be about aligning you with your style of play and your own intuition. Now, there are going to be people who, the common objection here is that, well, this ignores ethics. Well, my rebuttal to that would be, no, ethics is part of your intuition. I think we underestimate people's ability to have their own conscience or their own ethics. Ethics isn't just philosophy. Ethics comes from inside of you. Every person has a sense of ethics. People do things for a variety of reasons because they're addicted to certain things or they're desperate. But ultimately, I tend to think that most people want to be good. In their heart of hearts, they want to be good. And it kind of there's a couple of issues here that I want to talk about in this video. Maybe we'll talk about one before the other. But one is addictions and taking responsibility for addictions. And that includes your own need to have everything to your liking, right? You want everything clean and orderly and beneficial to you. And so you're going to neg everybody. You're like the annoying old lady who's just like nipping at everybody's heels, like, oh, you're not filling the dishwasher properly. You're not, I can't stand this, I can't stand that. Well, it's like, leave me alone. You know what I'm saying? You go do you. You keep your own advice. I'm not bagging on old ladies necessarily, right? That's not, I mean, old men can be just as bad. Young men, every kind of person, right? There are pros and cons to every kind of person. But so there's this issue of addictions. We'll talk about that. And there's also this issue of ethics. These are two very interesting things. And the way that we think about these, in my opinion, are oversimplified and too relationship-oriented, but not enough relationship-oriented. So what I'm going to do in the second part of this video is actually cover addictions first, and then we'll talk about ethics. So just give me 1 second. All right, friends, so let's talk about ethics. The problem with ethics is that we have a limiting belief that tends to think that ethics has to be attached to metaphysics. Like you can't expect someone to do something that isn't true or real. See, that I think is a limiting belief that comes from philosophy. But ultimately, ethics is not necessarily grounded in philosophy. Ethics is intuitive. So you can read your ethics right now. You don't need some story, some metaphysics or epistemology to know the one true ethics, which ultimately is not coming from you. It's coming from some book or some other teacher, right, who's trying to sell something to you. And no, your ethics comes from inside of you. You don't need to learn ethics. You just need to discover the ethics that's already inside of you, and to be the person who you are. It's not about becoming a good person or a true person. It's about becoming the person who you, like, accepting yourself. See, this is the trick for some reason. The problem is, you don't do this because you're listening to someone else tell you what's what. Like, a good teacher would be somebody who would help you learn how to listen to you. But those teachers don't exist because there's no money in this, really. I mean, not yet, right? There will be. This is the next level. Actually, this is what life coaching is about. Life coaching is not about dominating somebody with your own ideas. I don't know where you ever got that idea that was a good thing to do. Seems really immature to me, like kind of an aspect of modernity. Like, I got the one right answer, and I'm going to sell it to everybody like, that you should thank me. For what? For your speech about something? For what? Like life coaching isn't science. Life coaching is personal. It's one-on-one. It's not like generalizable, because ultimately you're your own life coach too. So it is personal. You know that there are things that you've wanted to do in your life that you haven't done. And so there's this aspect of like, should I just accept the fact that everything that's happened is good? Or should I be like whipping myself that, oh, I didn't do all these things that I wanted to do? Or maybe it's a little bit of both, but like, if you're not doing this for yourself, how could you help somebody else do this for themselves? So a life coach isn't just a trivial thing. It's a very specific kind of role. A life coach isn't a teacher. See, this is the mistake that was made, was that turning the life coach into the teacher. Because it's easier to do it that way, right? It's so much easier to say, buy my course, buy my book, I'm going to teach you how to be happy, I'm going to teach you how to find yourself, all this nonsense. But actually, that just becomes another addiction for you, right? We'll talk about addictions after we talk about ethics here. Because people might ask, like, well, I'm so spiritual, but my life still sucks. I'm so spiritual, but my life still sucks. How did that happen? Because you weren't given the right advice by yourself or by other people. Or you might say to yourself, that's all water under the bridge. It couldn't have been otherwise. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I kind of feel like in order to preserve your own enthusiasm, inspiration, and happiness, it's best to forgive the past. You got to forgive the past because, if you're trying to enter a new chapter in your life and you're letting the past kind of weigh you down from making a change that you really feel is beneficial to you, like you can't move into a new chapter because of these relationships that you have. Well, this is where ethics starts to turn into like the issue. There's an issue of ethics, but then there's also an issue of addictions. So those things weren't addictions a year ago or 2 years ago, right? Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I mean, who's to say, right? But from your own perspective, nobody does something for no reason. So whatever it is that you're having a problem with now, you weren't having a problem with before. In fact, you probably thought that whatever those things that you're considering to be addictions now, you liked those things before. You liked them enough to sustain a relationship with those things. But you want to enter a new chapter in your life for whatever reason, and you feel like there's certain relations that are holding you back. And then those are the things that we label addictions. So at some point you want to, if you have the willpower to do this, or the energy to do this, or whatever it is, the necessity to do this, you want to start taking responsibility for addictions, but it's all relative to like you moving into a new chapter in your life. Like maybe instead of working on spirituality like I have for the last 10 years, maybe now I want to start shifting and I want to start working on some other things. Who's to say what it is? Maybe I want to start working on playing music or playing chess or, any kind of creative endeavor. And that could be, improving your finances, improving your health, improving your self-esteem, improving your emotional mastery, improving your acceptance of other people, right? There's lots of things here. Because you're realizing like you get to a point where it's no longer working for you anymore, right? Because you're ready to move in a new direction. You got to move away from teachers that you formerly idolized too. See, that's the thing. Teachers come and go. They don't want you to think that, right? Because they want to hold on. Teachers have a need to want to hold on to the relationship, right? But that's their trip, not your trip. That's their hang up, not yours. So if if you've gotten everything that you could get from a particular teacher, right? It could be very well be that that teacher has become an addiction for you, and you need to move on. It depends on how that teacher positions themselves. Like how are they able to grow to maintain a long-term relationship with the entire spiral, not just with certain certain whatever it is that they want to position themselves as. Which is usually some kind of an authority over others. Right? It ignores your style of play and intuition and your need to change. See? So there is an issue here. I know a lot of you guys who watch my channel, you're pretty advanced in this work. So there is something to be said for revisiting lots of things post-awakening. Specifically this issue that, like, should people do X or Y from my perspective? Should, right? This should thing. But see, going back to like where I started in this video, it's so funny that, how highfalutin spirituality tries to be. But what's so weird is that when you look at someone's stubbornness to change, you realize this person is hung up, right? It's like in the 60s, they would say, so-and-so is hung up. This person is hung up for some reason. Whatever it is that they're preaching about, they're in their safe place. And it's almost like they're trying to go back and fix their past about something that they were hurt by. And this literally bleeds into the rest of their life. And they want to send out a signal, like a moral signal or a virtue signal, that other people should not be like those assholes that fucked with me when I was a kid. And they're addicted to that. They're addicted to that kind of thing because they don't know how to heal themselves of that. They don't know how to accept everything that's happened in their life as being okay to be here, so that they can move forward on a clean slate, without having all those demons trying to pull you back into prior relations or prior addictions that were fine when, earlier parts. Just because you did something yesterday doesn't mean that you need to do the same thing tomorrow, right? Can we all agree on that? I mean, that's not rocket science. Seems to be that this idea that, like, well, if it happened yesterday, it has to happen tomorrow. I mean, that's a kind of, you're carrying that, right? You're hung up there. So what I want to do in the last few minutes of this video is I want to address this question. If I am spiritual, why does my life still suck, right? Okay, so just give me 1 second. I'll come back and we'll do that. Okay, friends. So the reason why you're spiritual and your life still sucks is because you haven't changed in ways that you think that you should. And that's causing all of the negative emotions that you're feeling. And some of that, like from a human perspective, some of that is warranted, right? Because you recognize that there are ways that you want to change or have to change, and you're not doing those things. I would say that part of it has to do with the relationship with yourself and the relationship that you have with other people being off kilter. The relationship with yourself, like you're not listening to yourself. You're not feeling yourself. You're not thinking about yourself. Like you're not tapped into yourself. For some reason, there's a disconnect between you and yourself. And also, you're listening outward too much. You're letting other people basically rule over you with their speech and charisma. So you're distracted. You're in a bad relationship. But not really. Like you are, because you're not changing in way. Like you're not able to move into the next chapter of what it is that you're trying to do. And you don't have anybody to support you in doing this. There's a paucity of true life coaches out there who know how to help you align with your own aesthetics and your own intuition. Nobody's teaching that. I mean, maybe there are people teaching that. I don't see it, right? I mean, maybe I'm blind, but I haven't really seen that. Seems like teachers to me are like, they're trying to teach the one right answer. But it's like, dude, I graduated from college. I don't need any more college. You know what I'm saying? What I need is there's a new chapter that I want to move into in my life, and I need to do that and relate with people who will help me do that. Right? Ultimately, that's what a life coach is. A life coach asks you what you want to do and then tries to help you find the enthusiasm, the inspiration and the confidence to be able to do some specific thing that you came to that life coach and said, I want you to help me with this one specific thing. So there's a problem with like life coaches designating themselves as teachers. That is a common trap I can see. And maybe not. But if you're a teacher, right, it's really hard to be a life coach because these are almost like two different paths. So the life coach is all about, I want to help you, tell me what you want and I'll help you do it. The teacher is that I'm going to tell you what I want and how I think it should be done. Okay, so those are two very different mentalities. The teacher is constant, whereas the life coach is never constant, right? Because the life coach is always like perspectival and question specific. Addictions is a deep problem because it's like breaking up with something or someone that you really like, but you see as damaging to where you want to go in the next chapter. I mean, that seems to be a really good definition of addiction right there. Like, it's something that you really liked, or else you wouldn't have had a relationship with it. So you have to kind of forgive yourself for that and realize that it could have happened for any number of reasons. You don't know. Become at peace with that. But also the reason why you're viewing it as an addiction is because you're seeing that there's a chapter that you want to move into in your life, that those things have to be gone for some reason. And so you have to go through that. Nobody likes to go through a breakup, right? So you got to go through a breakup process on some level. But the more awake you are, you don't really have to entirely break up with anything. Just realize that we go through different chapters in our lives, and but don't hate your life. Never hate your past. See, this is what's screwing you up, is that you're bitter about your past and you're trying to control the future so that you don't get hurt again. See, that's the wrong kind of mentality to have. You just need to know what's good for you and be at peace and be happy meditate for an hour in the morning, and move into it, right? It's that simple. Okay, friends? Thank you very much. I'll talk to you in a week. Take care.